reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and in miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other. As Unitarian Universalists, we believe truth is larger than any one book or way. Religion and science go hand in hand. Integrity requires freedom of conscience. Diversity is something to celebrate. In the struggle for justice, we come alive. Our highest aspiration and calling is love. Whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever path you are on, you are welcome here. Will West Shore's newest members come forward to help light our chalice this morning? They are Reverend Dr. Andy Burnett, Heather Burnett, Donna Evans-Daremond, Melody Collison, Katie Lasky Donovan and children, Roisin, Neve and Anya, Ria Terranova Webb, Pearl Mannix, Frank Mannix, and their children, Finn and Callie and Sandy Johnson. You know, membership in West Shore is about building a solid spiritual foundation for oneself and for one's family and children. As a member, you join your light to that of our larger community. In hope, the light is joined. In faith, the light is joined. And in love, the light is joined.
Some of our new members bring their children into our community. I ask that all children and youth of West Shore right now to please rise in body or spirit. Oh, I know you're out there. If you are a child or youth, please stand up. Okay, so please continue to welcome people who are new to the play, the learning, and the love of our community. West Shore kids, if you will give a special welcome and do all of those things to the children of our new members, please say loud and clear, "We will."
Fantastic. Will the members of this congregation please rise and respond with the words printed on the screen? We receive you with open hands and hearts as you join us. We once again renew our own commitment to this religious community. We are proud and happy to have you among us. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Please celebrate these folks during coffee hour after the service. They will be signing the book then, so cheer them on as they do that. Let's show them some love. All right. Congratulations. So glad. I hope your journey is wonderful. Your membership journey is wonderful here. Congratulations to you. You can be seated now. That's great. Once again, welcome to West Shore Unitarian Universalist Church. We are so glad you are here this morning. We have so many wonderful things going on in this congregation all week long, all month long, all year long. Check out your order of service. Do you see how it's like packed with just information? Check out the weekly news, the West Shore Weekly. This is the second Sunday that we've had it. We're so delighted. It gives such good information. Again, check everything out in there so you can find how you can get involved, things coming up that you may love to be a part of. Let's now greet each other warmly. If you see someone you have not met before, say hello. And this is also a time for our children to exit to our RE classes. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Come to this good morning, remembering the journey of freedom. The land we are on was once another's. We mourn the legacies of oppression. Healing is our way forward. Joy is the birthright of all. Please rise.
morning. Before there was Halloween, many celebrated this time of year as Samhain, a Gaelic word that translates as summer's end. The holiday marks the midpoint between fall equinox and the winter solstice, and is believed to be a time when the barriers between the physical and spiritual world break down, allowing more interaction between the living and the dead. The customs of Samhain include rituals to welcome and honor deceased loved ones, while also protecting against troubled or malicious spirits. As we enter into sacred conversation on death and dying, I invite you to consider who you carry in your heart this morning. Those you have loved and lost, those whose memory you honor, and maybe those whose memory stirs up some of those troubled spirits. I also want to acknowledge the dying part of the conversation and those who are dealing with a terminal or a chronic illness, whose constant physical reminders never let the knowledge of mortality fade far from view. This morning, I carry my mom, my dad, and my beloved baby sister, all of whom passed away in the past 4 years. I hold Terry, the husband of my friend and West Shore member, Kieran. I also hold Sylvia, a young AmeriCorps volunteer who died more than 10 years ago when hit by a truck while riding her bike to work at the nonprofit that I led at the time. Among these deaths are those that were as beautiful as one could pray to have. Others were simply awful. And the awful ones still make me want to raise my fist and scream, "How could you?" Who is in your heart this morning? How might you honor their memory? Are there things you want to make sure are held on to, treasured, shared? Are there things you need or want to let go of, to forgive, either of yourself or your loved one? Samhain is a powerful time to do a simple ritual of intention or of letting go. One way is to write your intention or concerns down and burn them, literally or with the fire within. Here's an example. A few months before she died, my sister asked for us to go together to a women's retreat center that I've been going to for many years. It's close, a 45-minute drive. Over the summer, it remained on my to-do list, but not a priority. And then, unexpectedly and fairly rapidly, she was gone. It has become one of those malicious ghosts haunting me. Not Kelly herself, but my own guilt and regret. This Samhain, I will write a note to Kelly asking for her forgiveness and place that note in a small fire. I will add a prayer that her soul is at peace and kicking it up with Mom, Dad, and all of our other loved ones who have gone before. And if Kelly's spirit is indeed able to be closer to me at this time of year, I half expect to hear her whisper to my ear, "Get over yourself already." Whatever you are feeling right now, whoever's absence is present in your heart, whoever's mortality demands your attention, I hope you find comfort, as I do, in being in this space together and virtually, and that this time of year affords you moments of deep connection and release. Blessed be.
All are now invited to come forward and to share from the heart. Joys, these are the joys, these are the sorrows of our hearts, which I will take into my meditations this week. and pray for all that is our life.
All that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For our life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days good.
Good morning to my West Shore family. And I say that with all sincerity. It's interesting, as I pulled together some ideas to talk to you today, I didn't even know death and dying was one of the themes of the service, but it certainly resonates with how important this church is to me. So, on our first visit to West Shore in 2000, my late husband Mike and I quickly realized that this was our place, and these were our people. We belonged here. We were welcomed by Edie Schwady with a cup of coffee outside and felt like I was sitting in somebody's living room. After attending several service auction parties, we started meeting people and started to really feel a connection. That's a little plug for the service auction, by the way. When Mike died suddenly in 2002, Wayne and Kathleen came to my home. We sat and cried together and talked and shared stories. I still remember seeing members of the church, and I was brand new, come to the memorial service. Tony Couture, I remember, stood out. I was so touched by that as a new member. My father died 6 months later, and again, what a memorial service. It was just wonderful, and everyone left feeling so warm and such wonderful closeness. And I had a friend leave, and as she's walking out, she goes, "You know, I'm going to live the rest of my life as a Catholic, but I hope I die a Unitarian." She loved the service that much. I lost my brother in 1996 to AIDS, and I'm so grateful to be a part of this welcoming community and participate in the Pride events. I feel like I'm honoring Mark, and I also feel like I'm with him when I'm around so many people that remind me of him. It's so comforting, continues to be. In 2006, 7 women in the church started traveling together, and this is still going on. We didn't all know each other when we first boarded that ship in France. People on the trip called us the Cleveland Seven. These women have become the sisters I never had. We walked down the stairs together in Santorini behind the donkeys. I would not recommend it. I still see Chris Baumauer holding her nose. And Dorothy Fowler and I had the experience of a lifetime. We shared an intimate hour in an authentic Turkish bath in Istanbul. We got to know each other better than either of us ever wanted. It's a long story, but a funny one. As a teacher of history, I focused on civil rights, and I taught in Parma. And believe it or not, at that time, they loved it. I wrote a cultural diversity class. They bragged about it. Times have changed, haven't they? I'm so glad now for the justice work at this church and the opportunity to really work at becoming an anti-racist congregation. It means a lot to me. And I miss my little grandchildren, who are now adult grandchildren, and I especially miss them at this time of year, Halloween. One of my grandchildren, when my granddaughter was born in Salem, Massachusetts on Halloween night. And she thinks Halloween is for her birthday to this day. She's a little into herself. But every Sunday, little people arrive at church, little folks, some of them are dressed up all year round. They're all thrilled, they're excited, they're beaming to either sit in Joe Schaefer's choir or participate in one of the fun activities the RE committee has in store for them. And I have to tell you, a lot of these kids have red hair. And I feel somewhat responsible for it. Because there aren't that many redheaded parents, and I know it's a recessive gene, but okay. I'm looking out, and I'm seeing several couples that found their life partners here, and that's including me. My husband Kevin and I met in 2008 in Baker Hall after the service. I love my role on the hospitality team with all of its fringe benefits. West Shore is my family. When I met with my financial advisor recently, and we started looking at investments or whatever, what's left of them, I came to the beneficiary page, and I didn't even hesitate. The first thing I said to her was, West Shore Church first, and then I'll figure out what family to throw in there, see who needs it the most. Without hesitation, I said the church first. And I felt a warmth and a joy in knowing that I could help in some way to continue to support this community that has meant so much to me over the years. I could plant one of those trees we were always talking about for future generations to sit beneath. I hope it'll be a while until West Shore receives my gifts. I'm not planning on you getting them anytime soon. And it's something that we can do that costs nothing right now, but it means so much for the future. I hope you will reflect on the importance that West Shore plays in your life and in your family's lives, and consider leaving a planned gift to the church. There's a brochure in your order of service today that has information on that. Let's all help dig the wells that will provide nourishment to our future West Shore family. Thank you.
The offering will now be given and gratefully received. When I am frightened, will you reassure me? When I'm uncertain, will you hold my hand? Because when a parent, a spouse, a partner is soon to die or has died, because when it is a child or a sibling or a friend or a hero, because when it is our own death we are contemplating, in all such times, we need reassurance. Someone to hold our hands, to sing quietly, to share stories. But what do you say? How to say it? Of course, a lot depends on the particular situation we are talking about. Take this one, which comes from Dr. Bill Doherty, a Unitarian Universalist, who also is the director of the Marriage and Family Program there at the University of Minnesota. He says, "It was 1980, and I had been a Unitarian Universalist for about 3 years when my 7-year-old son, Eric, asked me something. He asked me, what happens after we die? Is there a heaven? Being a good you, I responded as follows. Well, some people believe that when we die, we go to heaven where we live forever. Other people believe that when we die, our life is over and we live on through the memories of people we have known and people who have loved us. To which Eric replied, but what do you believe, Dad? Well, some people believe that after we die, we go to heaven, and other people believe, and then Eric's like interrupting his dad and asks him again, but what do you believe, Dad? And that's the story. Eric asks his dad what he believes, and his dad is hesitant to share anything personal. He wants his son to step onto that free and responsible searching for truth and meaning path, right? He wants his son to go on that path, come up with his own answer. And his son is not going to buy it for 1 second. Eric wants to know what his dad believes because he feels he needs to. He is hungry for that. It's important for him. So we have a disconnect here, a big one. Bill Doherty is coming from one place, and his son Eric is coming from somewhere else. How many of you can sympathize with Bill Doherty's situation? Whether or not you have ever been some kind of caretaker or had children of any kind, death can be tough to talk about, especially for Unitarian Universalist parents and caretakers to talk about, because we want to be good UUs and step back from imposing our personal beliefs on our children. We want them to discover their own beliefs. We want them to be walking on their own authentic path, just as we want this for ourselves. What's for sure is Bill Doherty's hesitation is not at all strange. I want you to consider one of the most famous Unitarians of all time, Thomas Jefferson, from way back when, author of no less than the Declaration of Independence. Folks, come on now. You got to study your history. That's Thomas Jefferson we're talking about. This is what he once said. He said, I inquire after no man's religious opinions and trouble none with mine. That is what he said. And he applied this principle so stringently that he refused to share his thoughts about the afterlife or anything else theological with his kids. He never once talked about this stuff with his kids. His children were on their own. Bill Doherty is not the only one. But what could the underlying reason be? I think a big one is this: parents afraid, caretakers afraid that if they share their personal belief with their kids, even their confusion, even maybe they're not knowing, if they do this, they will do their kids spiritual harm. They will bias their kids against themselves. They will frustrate or distort the authentic personal growth of their children. And this concern is rooted in at least two different things. One is personal experience. Unitarian Universalist parents who, as children, experienced religious indoctrination and rote learning firsthand. How many of you have experienced that growing up? Indoctrination, rote indoctrination firsthand. It squelched your creativity. It pushed down the questions that you naturally had about Adam and Eve, the garden, the snake, Noah's Ark, on and on. It pushed down all those questions that just naturally popped up in your minds. If this ever did happen to you, well, here is one reason for your understandable concern. And then there is this. It is a full-blown theological assumption about the nature of spiritual growth. A full-blown assumption about that. This assumption goes something like this: spiritual growth happens in a way very similar to how an acorn seed grows. It's got a DNA pattern in it. That DNA pattern is already complete from the beginning. And what is needed above all is non-interference, right? For that DNA pattern to fulfill itself and to become what it was meant to be from the very beginning. It calls for non-interference from the environment. I want to call this the theology of spiritual individualism. Theology of spiritual individualism. According to it, what we need to do as caregivers is to stand back. We got to be neutral. We have to offer soil. We have to offer sunshine, just the basic nutrients only. And then just stand back and let the child's spiritual DNA unfold into the beliefs that are right for that child. To do more than this, to go beyond neutrality and actively share personal beliefs and preferences, well, this is to risk frustrating the spiritual seed. The end result is what I mentioned earlier: children biased against themselves. Children's spiritual growth frustrated or distorted. And thus the concern we've been talking about. Thus the hesitation. I want to ask, is the spirituality or the theology of spiritual individualism, is that your assumption too? As for myself, I'll just say it straight up. I think the spiritual individualism assumption is wrong. I think it's wrong. I really do. And one of my reasons for this is, first of all, it is out of line with a historical doctrine of our liberal ancestors. Our liberal ancestors who were called Arminians. Arminianism is just a theological idea. It's basically the idea that human nature is open, and people potentially can act in both helpful and harmful ways. There is no spiritual DNA that is so detailed that it determines a child to act in only good ways. The will is free. That's Arminianism. The will is free and not fated, not determined. Therefore, said our ancestors, the Arminians, therefore, moral and religious education is absolutely necessary because it teaches people what to love and do what is good and to hate what is not good. Arminian theology of our ancestors, it emphasizes the key role of both nature and nurture. It's not either or, it is both and. And you know, contemporary science is saying the same basic thing in a little different way. It says that humans are born with an innate capacity for language and for moral and spiritual behavior, but then it goes on to say that this capacity is but an abstract structure, waiting for specific content, waiting to be developed by experience in a particular community, defined by a particular place, by a particular language, particular practices. In other words, the hardware needs software. The hardware needs software. Again, as with our historical liberal theology, the message is not so much one of individualism as it is of interdependence. Nature must be met halfway with nurture. Both are required for our children and for us to have healthy spiritual lives. You know, one image that I use to help me make sense of all of this is that of musical talent. You know, think with me about musical talent. The capacity for spiritual growth within a child, within any of us, is just like a talent for music. But for this talent to become an actual skill that brings beauty to life, to become something more than an abstract dream, it's got to be met halfway with practice and with hard work. There's got to be teachers involved. And there's also got to be a focus. There's no such thing as music in the abstract. Tell me, are you going to practice voice? Are you going to practice the violin, the guitar, the tuba, the flute? Are you going to be like Dave Blazer and be awesome with the organ? I mean, you got to choose an instrument to focus on. Again, there's no such thing as music in the abstract. And similarly, there's no such thing as religion in the abstract. It always comes in the form of specific traditions and beliefs and rituals and stories and practices. And so if we withhold these things from our children, including our beliefs, if we try to remain strictly neutral as a bystander, we actually block their religious development. They starve spiritually right before our eyes. It happens as surely as refusing to allow our children to sing or to play an instrument. And that blocks their musical development. When adults, parents, caretakers, RE teachers, all alike, when adults share their beliefs with children, or when we worship with them, or we engage in other spiritual practices with them, we are not so much biasing them against themselves as we are giving them words and practices with which they can express the spiritual longing, that talent that they were indeed born with. That is life's gift to them, innate spiritual talent. And our job as caretakers is to help them to develop, give them the materials to do that. It is true. Some of us were, when we were children, it's true, other adults went way too far. They went overboard with that. We bear the scars. But to go overboard in the opposite direction is equally harmful. We got to find the right kind of balance, in other words. That's what we've got to do. One thing is for certain. We raise our children ourselves, or guess what? Others are going to raise them. Others are going to raise them. Our children hunger for our spiritual leadership, and if they don't get it from us, well, guess what? They're going to get it from somewhere else. Surely that merits an amen. Yeah. Do you know just as a side note, do you know that the founder of Mormonism grew up in a Universalist household? Who's the founder of Mormonism? Joseph Smith. How many millions of Mormons are there in the world today? Lots. Joseph Smith grew up in a Universalist household, and his parents, they never really talked about Universalism. But that spiritual hunger in him wouldn't go away. He was a religious genius. What would have happened if his parents had taught him Universalism? Where would our religion be today? Did y'all hear what I'm saying? Wow, we got to teach our children, or others are going to teach them. Others will, that is for sure. And you know, this is what Bill Doherty's son knew. He somehow knew this. It's why he wouldn't let his dad off the hook. Here's how the rest of that story goes. Eric insists on a better answer than he's been given, and his dad replies, okay, I believe that when we die, we live on through other people, but we do not go to a heaven. And at this, Eric gets quiet for a while, and then he says something that blows his dad out of the water. He says, I'm going to believe what you believe for now, and when I grow up, I'll make up my own mind. That's what he says. Isn't that great? And about all this, Bill Doherty says this. He says, my 7-year-old was teaching me something here. He was teaching me how to be a developmentally appropriate UU child. He was teaching me that. And I was not being a developmentally appropriate UU parent. I was not being a developmentally appropriate UU parent. He knew he needed answers for now to important questions. And he also knew that he could seek his own answers when he was prepared to do so. I want to commend the wisdom of Bill Doherty's kid to all of us. Adults, let the children in your lives know what you believe. Frame it like this. Say, here's what I think about death. Even if you're not even sure, say, I'm not really sure. Maybe we can study it together. I don't know. But just, here's what I think right now. And it's something you can believe right now. And when you grow older, you can make up your own mind about it. That is developmentally appropriate. It is what our children need to grow. Amen. Part 2 coming up. All right. When I am frightened, will you reassure me? Just a moment ago, we explored the situation of educating children on matters of death, some of the complexities surrounding that. But now we want to explore a different situation, the emotionally overwhelming quality of this, whatever your age happens to be. Faced with the mystery of death, we can feel so inadequate, so awkward. Deep and difficult emotions overtake us like a tidal wave. Often we may say nothing. Our tongues become like lead in our mouths. Other times, anxiety loosens our tongues and we just find ourselves overflowing, and we're just like, we're watching ourselves just talking up a storm, and we're like, stop saying those stupid things, right? I have never died before, says your best friend who may be dying of cancer. I'm not sure I can do this, they say to you. Oh, wow. How can we be with ourselves and other people in the overwhelming tide of grief in a way that is compassionate and helpful? And I think there is no better example of what to do and what to say than a story which Judith Viorst shares in her classic book, Necessary Losses: The Loves, Illusions, Dependencies, and Impossible Expectations That All of Us Have to Give Up in Order to Grow. That title is a mouthful, but it says a lot. Here's the story. 5-year-old Jessica showed her mother the picture that she had painted. There were black clouds, dark trees, and large red splashes. "My," said her mother, "tell me about this, Jess." Jessica pointed to the red splashes. "That's blood," she said. "And these are clouds." "Oh," said her mother. "See," said Jessica, "the trees, they're so sad. The clouds are black, they're sad too." "Why are they sad?" asked her mother. "They are sad because their daddy has died," said Jessica. The tears just slowly running down her cheeks. "Sad like us since Daddy died," said her mother. And she held Jessica closely, and they just cried together. That's the story. There's so much wisdom in it. First of all, there's the wisdom of opening up to grief, taking the time, as Jessica did, to pull out her colors and to paint a grief picture. And this can be so hard to do. We just have a hard time doing this. Somehow there is a cultural message that runs like a broken record in our heads, and it unconsciously biases us against ourselves. It says, grief is weakness. Grief is self-indulgence. You got to get a grip. You got to get with the program. You got to stay positive. You got to grin and bear it. You got to move on. This is the message conveyed so often in the context of our families. Times when family members ignore our grief, or they stop our grief, or they shame our grief. We hear from people who are supposed to love us, we hear, "Don't be silly." We hear, "I don't have time for this." We hear, "Go to your room." Family messages conveying the larger cultural message, which is, we only have happy feelings here. Anyone who is upset is ungrateful. In so many ways, we get this message that we are not supposed to take grief seriously and stay connected to our grief as it unfolds in our lives in its own time, in its own way. We try to rise above it. We deny it. We try to bypass it. We try to medicate it away. Anything but listen. And no wonder the colors of our world drain away. The grief toxifies. It becomes anxiety. It becomes depression. It becomes anger. It becomes addiction. It becomes psychic numbing. We become strangers to ourselves, inauthentic, stuck. Our spiritual style can be obsessive, and we find ourselves grasping for happy moment after happy moment, and just doing anything we can to stay away from the more challenging yet more soulful aspects of our lives. The colors, thank you. The colors of our world drain away because we're just living lives we simply can't bear to show up to. And then there's 5-year-old Jessica, who shows us the better way. She pulls out her colors and she paints her picture. The only way beyond sadness and grief is through it. There is no other way. You know, some people this morning are painting pictures of the death of a beloved friend, and they are feeling lost at sea. Some people this morning may be painting pictures of the death of a beloved hero, some famous personality that might have served to anchor them in their generation, in their cultural time. And with the passing of that hero, they're feeling lost at sea. These are losses. There are so many losses. All the grief paintings that are being painted this morning. How do we count the varied ways? But here we are. And we got to paint these grief pictures. Pictures that at times show the real anger that survivors feel towards those who have died and left them behind. Pictures that at times can show real guilt and regret about things done or not done. So many different kinds of grief pictures. We got to take the time, though, to paint them. The only way out is through. Opening up to grief. This is the first piece of wisdom coming to us from the story of Jessica. And here is the second. When someone shows you their grief picture, when they are showing you their grief picture, this is what you say. You say, "Tell me more. Tell me more." That's what Jessica's mom said to Jessica, and we want to do that as well. 3 little words. Tell me more. Listen to what the Reverend Judith E. Meyer says about this in reference to her experience of her mourning her mother's death. She says, "I found that each time I told my story to a sympathetic listener, my heart was a little less heavy. I became accustomed to hearing myself speak about my mother's death. This simple act diminished my sense of unreality. It helped me integrate this thing that had happened into the rest of my life." That's what she says, and I treasure it because, you know, they reflect my own experience of my own mother dying. This was about 15 years ago my mother died. And when I got that phone call, I simply cannot describe to you the unreality, the numbness that I felt that fell on me like a shadow over everything in my world. And what helped bring me back to life in the face of death's shadow, it wasn't people saying, "Hey, it's all for the best." It wasn't people saying to me, "Hey, she's in a better place now." Has anybody ever said that to you when you shared your grief picture with them? "Well, she's in a better place now." It wasn't people trying to distract me from my grief. It was people saying, "Tell me more." And that was an invitation to share stories. And you know, it led to as much laughter as tears. It really did. It was people willing to take a look at that grief picture. asking me why my trees were sad, why my clouds were so very dark, what the blood was all about. I just did not need people to have theological answers in that moment. I love theological answers, but not in that moment when I'm showing you my grief picture. No. And I didn't want anybody to take away that pain. The best help, the most compassionate support came from the people who simply helped me show up to my life in this most difficult time, soothing me, strengthening me, so that I could bear what was mine to bear, and I didn't feel so alone. That's really the ideal, not feeling so alone in the face of this great mystery of death. The fact is, no one can feel our grief for us. No one can do the emotional work that is ours to do. But there is tremendous comfort in the feeling that others are there for you. They cry with you. Others hold you. You hold them. Tremendous comfort. Someone who is fighting cancer or some other illness, they say this to you. They say, I have never died before. I'm not sure I can do this. And perhaps this is what you may say in response. You may say, I'm here, and I am with you. In your death, a part of me goes with you. Wherever you go, a part of me goes also. I love you. This is what you might say. And it reflects something that in the face of the mystery of death we dare never forget. That even more powerful than the mystery of death is the mystery of love. The love that never dies. We can never forget that. I am here and I am with you. In your death, a part of me goes with you. Wherever you go, I am with you. These are words of love. This is what we can say when together we are in the valley of the shadow of death. Love lifts up all things. Love hopes for all things. Love endures all things. Love never ends. Amen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry with us until we meet again. Is in the dance of trees which stir before the first breath of wind is yet perceived. Trust in the song becoming one with the dance. and all mysteries can be believed. Songs of lives long past that touched our own are written in the earth, ever giving. And now to maintain the harmony gives to us all lives worth living, for the oneness of everything. Oh, let us leave this place feeling deep gratitude for the songs of lives long past that have touched our own. And maybe they're not long past, maybe recently past, songs that have touched our own. Let us leave this place feeling deep peace because of the oneness of everything, which connects us in mystery, in miracle, to the universe and to each other. This is our faith. This is our hope. May it be so.